You're very welcome to this amplifier event called Blaze Your Trail. My name is Aideen Riada, and I have a panel of amazing experts in voice and self-expression and helping people to come into their power with me today. I'll be introducing them in a moment. And this is really a time for you. Because if you feel like you're just getting by, everything is just okay, and nothing is really lighting you up anymore, then this is the space you're going to find the um, inspiration and some guidance from experts who work with people in that area. Perhaps you just need a little bit of encouragement to step into a new path for you. So this is for you, and we would love to hear how you use this information in the future. So please feel free to contact us, and we're all available as well to work with people like you in the future if you are interested. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions and about this vulnerability around doing something a little different with with our lives, because we always feel it in ourselves before most other people see it. I know that for me, one person did say to me when I was a child, "Oh, you're a good singer. You should be a singer." And I was like, or she's actually what she said was, "You're a good singer. You should take singing lessons." And I was like, "Okay, I'm a good singer, but I'm not a good enough singer." Like I had a whole little dialogue with myself about that. But that turned out to be the thing that really is one of my drivers, one of my passions in life is that I love to sing, I love to create music. And someone spotted it and said it to me. But that doesn't always happen. And it doesn't always happen that the people close to us support us in the thing that we really want to do. Our family might even not support or encourage us in the things that we deep down would really love to do. And it's our personal responsibility to acknowledge what we have in our hearts. So, how do we do that? So, I'd like to call on Mark first. Here's the question. For someone feeling called toward a passion, but unsure where to start, what's the first small, courageous step you'd recommend?
Two things come to mind. One is find a small way that you can explore and have fun with that thing. What's one way that you can just have fun with it? Maybe it's as a hobbyist, maybe it's something where you enjoy looking up and doing research. Maybe you enjoy meeting new people, and so you're going to email a couple people in that field and say, "Hey, I want to talk because coffee sounds fun, and let's do that." The other thing is that the other thing that comes to mind is getting some personal support. Um, all of us here in this room, we're in the business of supporting other people in some way. And I would recommend like looking for the kind of support that would support you as a person holistically, but also tie into where you're really considering going. If you can do both of those things and it can be an element of fun and exploration along the way, I think that's a great, great first step.
That's wonderful. And I know that you work with people doing even artist circles and retreats and things like that. So that would be an awesome start. There are things available, but often when we have this idea or this light bulb moment of, oh, I would like to do this, it's often at a time when we haven't seen it much around us and we have to somehow search for those things. So I love that you want people to take a lighthearted step, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to put all your eggs in that basket. You're not saying, I'm becoming da 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 da. This is how rest of my life is going to be. You're just ex going into an exploration, which I love.
Mhm.
So going next to Regyna, who also is an amazing friend and mentor that I've been working with as well in the past, and she helps visionaries sustain a holistic business through personal alignment and natural timing. So, Regyna, how would you speak to this idea of where they should start and what small, courageous step you'd recommend?
Yeah, I love a small courageous step that is very much in my I always say take one small tangible step, right? One small courageous step is a beautiful way to say that. And my my advice would be to be create a devotional practice around it. Now, what does that mean, right? A lot of times people will say, have a daily practice. I shifted from having daily practices to having devotional practices because daily practices felt like really heavy. Like I had to do it every single day. But in kind of building off of what Mark just said, a devotional practice is just creating space for it, right? And to do it in a way that is coming from your heart space, that is just creating the sacred space to show up in that energy on a regular basis, whatever that may mean for you, daily, weekly, monthly, ongoing. But let it be fun and let it be easy. And then it becomes the space of devotion where you're building it one courageous step at a time.
I really love that word devotion. It really speaks to my soul. It's like, that soul purpose and that the sacredness of that creative endeavor. Because I think that when it comes from deep within us, when we have that urge,
Hmm.
it doesn't necessarily feel logical. It's not necessarily something that comes from the mind. So that
Right.
word devotional practice just it makes it me feel very connected to the sacredness of following our gut or following
Yeah,
our joy in life.
exactly.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Thank
Regina.
you.
Moving next to Lesley. And Lesley's been working in the healing coaching world for about 38 years, and she's known as Voice of Your Soul, intuitive coach and speaker. So, Lesley, how would you speak to this idea of taking a small, courageous step?
I love what the others had to say. And I actually take a step back a little bit from most often with the people that I work with. They are in their heads so much. They are so busy. They are so going. And if something strikes them, they think I've got to do, I got to do, I got to go do. And my first step is usually go outside in nature, take your shoes off, stand amongst the trees, and find the stillness within you. Because it is in that stillness, those moments, that we tap into our own divine inner guidance and our own nature. Especially, I'm pointing at the heart, which you can't quite see. But when we find those moments of stillness, then we can really collect ourselves. We become more aware of the environment that we're in. We've kind of stopped the doing process, the looping of whatever our mind tells us, to be really present. And then you can go on to what's next. But it's the start of breaking that habit of discovering something new is that stillness within.
Certainly is. It's one of my favorite things to do. I've been watching a little video lately where a girl stands with a tree nearby. I saw if anyone saw this, the tree is nearby and she speaks to the branch and says, "Come closer, come closer, come closer, follow my voice." And the branch actually moves toward the person, which I thought was absolutely mind-blowing. But nature, nature has an awareness of us. And that was really what I learned from that. And I remember one time standing in the one of my favorite woodlands in Ireland called Lacan. And I looked at the trees and I was like, these trees, they know something. Like they just are themselves. They just stand there. And that's good enough. That's good enough for them to just be there. And I just put my arms up and I said, I just want to be able to just be and stand in my space and not feel like I have to be more than just myself, to be able to feel like just being myself, just whatever my arms are my branches, my legs are my roots, whatever it just visually to see in myself that that was enough. And we are all part of nature. And that's one thing that a lot of people forget. So this connection that you're suggesting, Lesley, it's a beautiful practice for anybody who needs to step back from the way the mind works. And that's one of the problems with, I think, when we have a passion, we try too hard to find out what all the steps are, right? We want a list, we want to know the path, and we want to follow someone else's path. And what everybody is suggesting is, no, let's stop. Let's do something simple. And that one of being in nature is absolutely beautiful. I love that. Moving on to Dr. Gary. He's a presentation coach and works with transformational body therapy to awaken creativity. And by working with the body, he helps people to communicate more effectively. Gary, would you like to speak to this question of where to start when you have a passion? What is the courageous small step that you'd recommend? Make sure that you unmute, please.
So far, all of you who've presented have shared about fun, stillness, and stepping back. Well, being the outrageous character that I am, I'm going to share a courageous moment that actually took place in my life. Being a body person, it was a visceral experience, and it catapulted a launching of the direction that I've been on since my early 20s, when I was meeting with a friend's father about why I couldn't get into medical school to be a psychiatrist. I thought that was my burning passion. I love with children. I love creativity. I love working in psychiatric hospitals, springboard diving. I was very creative. And I met this doctor, not as a therapy, but just as a a guide, a friend, my father, my fraternity brother. And he looked at me, and when I described the reasons that I thought I was passionate for what my parents basically was programming in me that I was telling myself I wanted to do, he looked at me and he said, "Son, I want to tell you what I see in front of me is you're a creative, probably going to be ahead of your time with whatever you choose to do and follow your passion. But I've just heard you tell me about success, security, money, all the things that we're programmed about be a doctor. And son, go find your own way. There's these schools of professional psychology just starting out. I feel like you could be a real forerunner if you find your own way and rather than try to follow someone else's." So when I left the office, the moment I'm leading to was my whole body was shimmering, sweating. And I shouted literally out loud on the streets of Boston, "Yes, yes, yes!" And I moved to San Francisco with 2 huge bags, telling my mom and dad, "See you later." My mom knew I was leaving forever. It was the first time she cried, perhaps in ages in her life. Didn't even cry at her father or her husband's funeral. And that moment that I want to recommend to everybody is to find the yes that burns and boils and shouts and sings and even whispers. It can be a small step. And for me, it was a huge, courageous step that launched the path that I've been on for the last 55 years.
Wow. And it's so true. We're all so different. We all have different paths way forward, but sometimes we do need to make a choice. And sometimes that choice is dramatic. And sometimes we can't have that an obvious um, net, like a safety net. Sometimes there isn't an obvious safety net as we move into our passions.
Aideen, I have to stop you for a second because there's this wonderful Zen saying that I was going to include in my sharing that now that you've said that, I'm going to share it with everyone. You've probably heard it before. Leap, and the net will appear.
Yes. Yes. And when I worked a lot with people who enjoyed singing, I would always say, look, there is an audience for you. It might not be the people that you want, it might not be the people closest to you at the moment, but we find a new tribe. And so another courageous step could be to seek out that support, to find people who enjoy what you do, to speak about what you enjoy to someone who you know is interested in something similar. Um, so a lot of really great ideas there, but how are you going to choose which one? I have to tell you, you have to see in your heart what makes you, what feels like that energy, what feels a little bit like I need that. I want that. And if you can't feel an urge to take a step, then, like Lesley mentioned, take a step back, take a step inward, because something comes, something will inspire you. I remember when I wanted to start doing more with music, and I made a little prayer. I said, whoever's out there, I want to work with music, but I don't know how. I need help. This was probably the first time I said, I don't know. In my mind, I thought my brain could find all the answers, but no, this was more like a call to the divine, to the wild, to nature. I just don't know. And 3 weeks later, I heard a voice saying, do a singing workshop for adults. And I didn't want to do it. I knew it wasn't my own head telling me, because it was literally what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a music teacher like my mother, who was a guitar teacher. But this time I trusted that little urge. So I know from experience that if you pose the question, how can I follow my passions? How amazing might that be? Is there help out there? Can I get an inspiration that you will receive something? And if you feel something in your body, definitely listen to that, because I know both Mark and Gary work very much with that somatic experience. What's your body telling you? So love these answers. We are going to move on to the next question. Is there anything anyone would like to say to wind up that question, having heard the others?
Actually, I feel like I've maybe told this before on a different amplifier event, but I'm going to bring it in again because when Gary said leap and the net will appear, I actually have a different experience with that. I was in a quiet meditation, right? I connect with my soul wisdom, and that is the guidance that leads me forward in all of the things that I do. And I felt like I was grasping for, like looking for that next step, and I had this vision of being at a cliff, like the edge of a cliff over a valley. And I just stepped forward, and there was a stepping stone that appeared. But it was transparent, like it was there the whole time. I just couldn't see through it until I took the step on it, and then it formed, right? And then I took another one and another one and another one. And suddenly I was like out above, just floating above all of this, this valley below. And I had that thought come in like, well, but where's the net? And so I started to like reach for the net and feel for it underneath the stepping stones, and I fell, and the net was there. And what it told me was actually trust the process, right? Take that one guided step at a time, that one courageous step at a time, because if you go looking for the net will appear, right? But if you actually just follow your guidance, then the steps will appear. So just a different reframe in that, right? I think the intention of that leap and the net will appear is that. However, for me, I was like, that means I'm looking for the safety net, right? What if I wasn't looking for the safety net, but I was actually just following my guided alignment, and know that if I needed it, it was there, but I don't need it.
Beautiful. Yay, gorgeous. Beautiful. Okay, staying with you, Regyna,
Yeah.
what's your best advice for handling criticism or resistance when doing something unconventional or deeply personal?
Get comfortable knowing that you are the only person that knows the whole story, right? You are the only person who is getting that internal guidance. You are the only person who knows your heart. You are the only person who understands your vision, right? A lot of times you don't even know your vision, you just feel your vision. You can feel it. Sometimes you do see it, right? I have the gift, and sometimes it feels not as a gift, to be able to see the whole picture, the whole big picture of what it looks like when it comes together. But then I have to back it all the way up to step one and take it one step at a time. And I don't get the full directional, like, you put in the GPS and it's like, here's the step by step, turn by turn. I get the big picture and then the very first thing. And all the rest of it has to be taken in trust. And so when you are getting criticized because somebody doesn't see the full vision, they don't understand what you're doing, and they're just seeing that one step at a time, you have to know and get really comfortable understanding that it's not your business to see it through their lens. They are going to encounter you through their own lens, through their own experiences, through their own doubts and fears and hopes and dreams, right? And you are the only person that continues to bring that forward. So you have to trust, you have to show up, be different, and trust the process. Oh, you're muted, Aideen.
Thanks,
I know
Regyna.
you're.
I want to ask Lesley to speak to that point next, if that's okay.
And that's fine. I love what you had to say. And it is a lot of trust. Again, you are the only one that knows your true path and guidance. You may not see the stepping stones, and those are an image, a symbol that comes up often for me. But that trust of moving forward is huge. This morning, one of the first things that I do before my meditation is I usually pull a card, a theme, show me what I need to know, tapping into my own guidance. Well, three of them fell out on the floor. And I went, oh, this is interesting. And the very last one was more of what I'd call an outcome card. And it was upside down, and I see that as in protection. And it was called The Never Ending Story. And it just kind of mirrors what you have to say. There's so many people that we all work with that have this never ending story. They tell it over and over again. And what happens, it becomes this big drama in life, right? It's this huge thing. And it's like, what are you making that mean? Well, when it's upside down in protection, the protection is one of that for myself. And the message is not my monkey, not my circus, right? The drama that's happening around isn't my drama. It isn't my piece to change anyone else's mind or to try and explain what it is you're doing when you can't see the next stepping stone, when you don't know exactly where you're going, because all that does is add to confusion of in your mind, not in your heart, where your heart knows where you're going. So that's one of those things that I don't try to explain to everybody and everything what I'm doing. Very simply said, and if you gravitate, if you resonate, if there's a harmonic resonance, those are the people that I work with. I don't have to think about who's coming. They'll find me because it's that trust factor. And just, okay, I'm doing the work. Now I trust the rest of it's coming.
Beautiful. Dr. Gary. Just need to, great.
Yeah. Well, I've been a rebel from my first words in this life, which was to my mom when she was insisting to help me learn how to walk. My first words in this life were, no, no, self. And I have been throughout my 73 years a individualist of individualists and I've been moving far away from my family pattern ever since they sent me to the best camps and the best schools. At age 20, I bolted out of there at that moment I just told you about earlier, at that moment. And I've been moving west ever since. Now I'm in the Sydney longitude here at the top of a mountain in a permaculture community. And I have been so unconventional in this life. Came out as a court jester when I was 30 in Hawaii. I couldn't be more outrageous. And something happened after knowing that by being as colorful as possible, as outrageous as possible, as different as possible, so I could individuate from my family, say, you have to do it this way. This is why we brought you up. It turned around, which was very surprising to me. Since I've been living here in Australia for 28 years, now my methodology with body therapy, with presentation coaching, my whole visceral, gutsy way of expressing through the body has become very sought after. And I never thought that would be. I always felt I'd be an outcast because I'm so different. But you know what? I ain't going to change. And the people that have a problem with me, often I say this, someone says, I'm offering to do some kind of a seminar or coaching session for their staff, or it doesn't really matter. And the person will say to me, oh, well, we've never done anything like that before. And I said, that's exactly right. And that's when I show up.
Very good. Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of us feel very different on the inside. I mean, we're actually maybe don't look as different as you have a dramatic way of expressing yourself, Dr. Gary, but a lot of us just feel internally, I don't fit in here. I don't feel like people understand me or whatever that might be. Um, I remember my dad would give me advice from time to time. And I realized that he was a little bit negative. He used to say, you can't make money in music. And I took that to mean that you should never do any music because I wanted to do that that was my calling. It's not my only thing that I do now, but at the time I hoped that that would be, right? So it made me feel like, okay, I can't do that. And after a long time and kind of that sitting with that discomfort, because when we have that thing inside us, but we don't take any action on it, it becomes like a little, it's like I don't know, like it's like the dark corner in the room. It's like you see it every now and again, and you're like, oh no, not that thing. But inside me, it felt like a pain, like a heartache. And I decided to reframe that my dad as a negative reinforcement. So he was the thing I needed to resist to get where I wanted to go. He was like this point of I can be myself. I can be somebody different to what my dad has in his head. And I recognized as well that a lot of what he was saying was coming from his own programming, his own attitudes and beliefs from growing up in Ireland, in a time when there wasn't maybe a ton of opportunities for people in music, but now we live in this different world. It's so different. So I'm excited to see where things can keep moving to if I keep trusting myself. And I want people watching to consider trusting themselves as well. Trust yourself. Mark, on that question of handling criticism and resistance when you're doing something deeply personal.
Yeah, I think that as I look at this question, the things that come to mind are fear, maybe tied with a bit of shame for how different or outside the typical box we may be wanting to run. Um, and I think the fear is really this idea of like, what will people say? What will people think? Will they buy in? Will I have the finances to go along with what I'm wanting to pursue? And what strikes me as interesting is that the problem, what we're afraid of, is this community, putting this out into a community and getting this reaction. However, the answer and solution to that same problem is also community. It's been developed in neuroscience. We know that our brains don't change isolated from the people and the communities that we have. And when you have around 8 other brains giving an impact of who you are and how you're showing up in a certain way, it begins to very quickly at a faster speed rewire your own brain. This is one of the reasons why I do artist circles, is because that creative expression is such a vulnerable piece that to stay on the creative edge, it's necessary for us to have communities that are safe places to try stuff that we know are not going to be filled with judgment, right? That we know we can show up and play and it's going to be fine, right? And so when we do that, then what happens is that when we take that into the broader culture, we begin to be able to move through the resistance because we've got those 8 people kind of standing on our shoulder and we're hearing what they've said and we're hearing the impact that we've made there and go, I want to bring that to more people. And so that's one solution that I think is really the ultimate solution to move through that resistance and that fear of being seen, is to find that safe community where you can take your artistic and vulnerable expression and bring that consistently and be consistently welcomed and loved and desired in that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's one of the things I would say to people as well is that we become the beacon ourselves. So when we step into our power, when, I mean, the fact that I had, created a whole business around confidence in singing and was working with, people, and that I started putting music up on YouTube and married a music composer, right? All those things, that I have people around me that have been looking toward me and seeing that. And I've created communities and kind of opportunities for people to get together to do those things. So what can happen is you are forging and blazing a singular trail. It might feel like you're the only one on it. And then you see a few other people are on it, and then you realize, oh, there's a lot of us on this. And then we become part of that kind of, let's, yeah, join us, Yeah, what are you doing? Let's see your version of this, what's your recipe for this dish, because we all have our own way. It's not going to be ever exactly the same. It's always going to have something special and unique that's unique to you. But we have so many things in common. Actually, when we see a few people around us that are doing something similar, it does give us courage. So I love that idea, Mark, of finding that community. So we have time for, I think, for one last question. Um, I'm going to go with the one that Regyna felt was exciting. So I shared some of the questions with the guests before we started. So this one, what's your best advice for handling criticism? Oh no, that's the wrong one. Go back, go back, go back. How do you balance establishing credibility in your field while staying true to your unique voice and values? So I would like to start with Lesley on this. So this is kind of where does the I can make money from this meet I'm so different, right? Balancing and establishing credibility
Okay.
while also being true to those unique urges and voice.
How I look at my own experiences of when was being called to the shamanic path and pranic healing and all kinds of different modalities, which have happened all through my life. But when it came to the shamanic part of my healing and the work that I do in this world, that had such a deep resonance within me that I knew that this was something that I could just share instead of trying to find ways to kind of like cover it up before you shared it, right? And then came the online world, which exploded. I got on it before having an internet before 2020. It really exploded and took off. And I found myself going, I don't know anything about this online world business. I've done a brick and mortar business. I've done a lot of in-person workshops and everything else, one-to-one coaching. I didn't know about this. And what I ended up doing was giving my power away to someone else because they knew better. And it became a time of, well, like I have to follow this process in order to make any impact. No, in order to make money, you have to do this, this, and this. And it was so overwhelming at a point that I kept and again, I'm one who's like, where's that stepping stone? I'd go back into the stillness. I'd be asking myself, is this the right way? Is this what? And then I have those little nuggets of things that led me to having my own TV show for a while on a woman's network. And what recently happened too, connected to that, it is what happened was finding your own voice and realizing within myself that I needed all of that I went through. Nothing was wasted on that time. It meant that I was standing in my own integrity, in my own shoes, my own voice. And what came about was another opportunity to create with one of the women that I had met through that, when I had my own TV show, through that network, reached out and said, hey, I'd like you to be part of this group. I know what a great speaker you are, and this is leading to opportunities. And it is leading to 2 speaking events at the end of September in LA. That wasn't on my radar. That wasn't there at all. So there are some times that we go through these things and we get real frustrated thinking, I'm supposed to be somewhere else. I'm supposed to. And that's when you like all over yourself. You just stop. Stop that madness. Stop looking outside of yourself. Stop giving your own heart power away to someone else, and just be within yourself and really find that trust and that faith of why you're here on this planet at this time. Maybe a huge endeavor, or it may be a smaller passion. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're here. And that's what matters most of all. And if you're here, you made the choice to be here. And the world needs your wisdom, your guidance more than ever. So I hope that answered what you asked. I felt like I went on a little bit of a tangent, but that really came from the heart. So we'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. I think it really did answer it, because I think what you spoke to there was this, establishing credibility is something we kind of look outward to do that, right? We're kind of judging how people see us and then wondering, okay, how do I interact with this outside world? And if it comes from an external source, like you said, someone else tells you this is how you establish credibility, then that doesn't really work. So I thought that that story was very relevant to this point. Dr. Gary, would you like to speak?
Sure, I'm always happy to speak. I've been thinking, as all of us have been sharing on this last question here, of moments in my life when I consciously remember in my early 20s in San Francisco when I was breaking free, as I already mentioned, from my family pattern. And I was deep into body therapies and about to find my own form. I was so off the map. People would say, oh my goodness, is this going to be just a fad, this holistic health? It was just so early, 1973. And I had a feeling at the time. It was an urge. I didn't know where it came from, but I realized that in order to have what I was doing as different as it was, as different as I was and am, I needed to find a way, and I did, to credentialize what I was doing, to believe in myself. So what I did was, when I was doing body therapy sessions with people, and they would often come up with new insight or a fresh idea, I would plant like little bubbles around a cartoon, around a image of a body. I drew a picture of a body, and I'd put the little blurbs of what conversation was embedded there around those parts of the body, and I'd color them, and I'd make it tangible, physical, measurable, and therefore it was credible. And this is way before I decided to go on further paths. I finally, years ago, not too long ago, well, 20 years ago now, decided to go the route of getting a PhD in my methodology of the body therapy. And, it was difficult. It was 4 years of taking everything that I'd learned and limitations of the study, practical, and I just put it out on a blank piece of paper in a computer. I built a refrigerated telephone booth in Bali, in this place that I was living in, my own center that I had over there, to save my computer because the computer wouldn't survive the humidity. And at nighttime, I would type on these blank pages these different subjects. And it took 4 years. But after months and months and months, what I thought was impossible, it began to write itself. And through that process, I had a deep understanding of what makes my work unique, the multi-sensorizing of breath, sound, movement, gesture, tone, all together. Of course, that's what reinforces the new shifts. But it took me 4 years to authenticize that. And it was through a PhD thesis. And I'm really glad I did it. But it was hard at the time, a piece of coal that's turned into diamond under intense pressure. I didn't know what was going to come from it, but I felt it in my body. I felt this is it. This is the uplift. This is the nurturing. This is the empowerment. I knew it was the right thing to do. And now it's definitely seen as uniquely a master in my own methodology that stands alone. And I would never change what I've done before, but it wasn't always easy. I followed my heart.
I absolutely love that. So establishing credibility by making it more tangible, physical, measurable. I love that. It absolutely blows my mind. And it's interesting because I decided to work in a restaurant over the summer because I was tired of being at home in front of this computer. And I realized through that they had a certain precision in certain things that they did, like polishing a glass, right? I've done a lot of glass polishing, right? And I was like, ugh, I didn't want to do it perfectly, right? I didn't see the value of doing it perfectly. And then I was like, hang on a second. I obviously resist, precision is what I realized. And I said, oh, how can I learn from this? And I realized that I wasn't being very precise with my clients. And I said to myself, right, I need to take notes when I have my clients. I don't do that usually, right? Fly by the seat of my pants and they get a great session, but I don't reinforce that. So just recently, I started writing everything down. I'm putting it into my Google Calendar because I've got their appointment is in there. There's space for description. And I told my client I'm going to be sending an email, sent the email straight afterwards. And I've seen people do this, but I just hadn't bothered doing it myself, right? Because of my personality. So it's like a new step for me, taking something that's intangible, something that's in my own mind, something that I know that's valuable. But when I write it down and when I send an email, and then I send a follow-up email 2 weeks later saying, how did you do with that practice? Even if it's just a breathing practice, I need to know that that I'm doing everything I can in my work to help someone. And I was leaving that piece out. So I love that. Let's go next to Mark.
I appreciate what Gary shared. Just I thought it was very appropriate, Gary, that you spoke to the embodying of the practice and the physicality of it, like making it physical. I think that was really appropriate. For me, I think that there's a way in which my brain works, and maybe Regina, you can relate to this, is that I tend to see that big picture. There's a tendency towards being 10 years ahead of everybody else in the room. And so I'm seeing this very different world, right? And so my modus operandi tends to be, what do we need to do to step towards that direction, right? Whereas everyone else is seeing this one and they want to take one next step. However, I think that in the world of creatives, and really as we're creatively building toward our passion, that idea of being able to see 10 years ahead is more prevalent within that subgroup of humanity. And so I think that there's some core problems that come with that we have to begin to overcome. Because what can happen is that's what I want to do. And now I'm starting to feel like I need to be asking people to pay me money to do that thing because that's what I want to do. When the reality is that maybe you don't do that yet, right? So I have this paradigm that really helps me. What I want to do, explore it. What I will do, plan for it. And what I do, get paid for it, right? So what I actually do, what I can show up and say, this is what I do. I do this right now. I have done this. I still do this. Get paid for that thing. Don't do it without getting paid, right? That's where your bread and butter money is going to come from. But you're also always moving and you're always growing, just like we all are. So there's things that you already know you will be doing in a few months or a year's time. Plan for it and have it all laid out exactly what's going to happen. Then there's also these pie in the sky dreams that we have. This is the 10-year ahead stuff, right? Explore it. What kind of a group setting can you put yourself in to be able to learn more about it and to digest, maybe experience some of it? Whether that's actually as like a co-facilitator or maybe that's just as a client. Hey, I'm interested in doing that. Maybe I should try that, see what that's like. So explore the things you want to do, plan for the things you will do, and then get paid for the things that you do.
Well, I've written those down. Those are great perspectives on goals and on, just like what to do right now, which I think is just beautiful. Genius, actually. Really, really good. So we'll be finishing up now in a few minutes. We have Regyna left to speak to this question about how to establish credibility in your field while staying true to your unique voice.
Well, I love everything that was shared here, and agree with all of it, Mark. I definitely have the 10 years ahead paradigm as well, and it frustrated me for a really long time because I was like, well, why am I always 10 years ahead, right? Like I was creating felted vegetables and like weird things out of three-dimensional yarn and felt, right? And then Etsy blew up like 10 years later and suddenly it was all over the place and I was like, I was bored with it by that point, right? So here's the thing is step one is embrace your weirdness. And I don't mean weird as in like the typical spelling. I mean the original, right? WYRD. It's not what makes you different. It is your capacity to choose your own destiny, to create your own destiny. That's what that word originally meant, right? So embrace that about yourself. What is the thing that you do uniquely that no one else can do? Know that as yourself. Celebrate that as yourself and take action from that place, right? Credibility is created by showing up. When you see an innovator, someone who has taken an idea or a concept in a different way and they have put it into practice and done the things that Mark just said, right? And done the things that Gary and Lesley just spoke about by making it tangible and physical and measurable, right? Exploring it and taking it into a paid forum, right? When they've done that, that then becomes their reputation. They've created credibility for themselves, but they didn't do it by doing it alone in a little bubble all by themselves for those 10 years, I promise you, right? The idea came forth in that way. And as they developed it and as they showed up to create it, what they did was the same thing that I did when I developed the Charting Your Course system, right? The same thing that I did when I co-founded the Mingle Learning Collaborative, which is a community where we actually share innovative visionary ideas. We do the work together because as Mark said earlier, right? Evolution doesn't happen in isolation. The ideas come beautifully, right? Just like Lesley was saying, when you back up and you get still and you allow the wisdom to come into you, right? But then you actually have to bring it through you because otherwise you're just a genius full of ideas. You're not actually creating credibility. You're not actually building something from that. And it may take 10 years from the inception of that to the delivery of it. But you will not get there if you don't take aligned action with it, right? You've got to show up and do the work. So document your insights, right? That's one of the first things that we learn in the Charting Your Course system is connect with your soul wisdom, document your insights, and later on, document your process. Celebrate your progress. Do it out loud, because that's what creates the system. And what happens in a PhD program, how a PhD program is different than a master's or an undergrad, right? Is it is your genius, your ideas that you are creating. You're developing your body of work. So whether you do that in a PhD program or you do that in community with other people or you do that in your office or wherever you're doing that, right? Do it. Develop the body of work. Document your insights, then document your process and celebrate it and share it. And that builds credibility.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's about that internal pull to share something. And I just love that simplicity of what you said is credibility is showing up. And that credibility and showing up leads to reputation. And that's really something that, you know, actually is interesting because I got a phone call just there a second ago from a guy. And I remember him contacting me, asking me for help once early on. And I was like, wow, he asked me. And the only reason he asked me is because somehow I had shown up enough in whatever I had been doing that he knew that I would have an answer for him. And it was like one of the biggest honor, like I just felt honored to be called upon. But yeah, that idea of just showing up. So how are you going to show up for yourself in the next 24 hours? Let's go back to that small courageous step and please share with us how you are doing. Lesley, Mark, Dr. Gary, Regyna, and I, we love hearing your stories. We want you to contact us, okay? And if we're not the right person to be a support to you on the way, take a next step to whoever it is you are being drawn to and keep taking steps. I always say, never give up. And I like to throw everything at it as well. Like I'll try anything. Like if I think an affirmation might help, I will try it. If I think going outside will help, I'll try that. So try the things that you're being guided to do, but we want everybody to step into their power. We are all so important. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. We're all meant to fit in together. And no matter what stage you're at with your trail, start with a spark and let's see where that takes you. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. Thank you to all my guests. I'll be putting all of their details in the show notes and we look forward to seeing you again. And actually, the next big event we're doing is the Voice Summit, which will be coming up in September 2025. So if you're watching before that happens, get in touch and I will get you the details for that. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.